Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you so much, Linda, for this opportunity. I can see a lot of familiar faces over here, and I'm so glad to have met some of you. Like I can see Anne and Lorna and Mari and Stuart and Linda, of course. Sorry if I'm not taking some names. Yes, the first wave of COVID and the second wave of COVID has been absolutely terrible for not just for India, for us at the Leprosy Mission Trust India. Last year, in the first wave, we lost four of our wonderful staff members. And this year, a lot of people have got affected by COVID, including me. I also got COVID, was affected by COVID, but luckily I recovered in time. Some of the people, like Dr. Mary, I have experienced a very, very bad time after being affected by COVID, and she's recovering. So I'm representing on her behalf. Thank you so much. Uh, okay. Okay. So, sorry. So, I'm talking about the challenges. The layered challenges. The first wave of pandemic struck in India in March, like I've just mentioned, and there were measures such as a complete national lockdown. This was a unprecedented and unheard of lockdown. India had never faced this, and there was a mass exodus of migrants who work in urban areas, and this led to a lot of livelihood losses and food insecurity for millions of people. Many people affected by leprosy, who are the most vulnerable of all communities, were at the receiving end. And we started receiving desperate calls for food, medicines, and many, many essential commodities. And the COVID response was getting priority. However, all non urgent hospital consultations were discouraged. Um, Sorry. Okay. Right. So while the whole nation was grappling with understanding what COVID is and trying to give it priority, there were many, many other medical issues that were completely neglected. And one of the major problems that happened was that there was no transportation available in the country at all. And because of that, people affected by leprosy, especially coming to our hospitals, we have 14 hospitals and clinics, they were unable to come, and there was no disability management. Now that creates a lot of problem, because if there are some people with ulcers, non-healing ulcers, and they can't come for treatment, it can lead to lifelong disabilities. So what did we do as an approach towards mitigating impact was we looked at a six-prong approach. The first of all, we started looking at providing complete healthcare access. In spite of the country being under complete lockdown, we started thinking of innovative ideas, and that's when we activated our mobile therapy van. If people could come to us, we could get the e-passes and the permissions from the government and go to the doorstep and treat people. So that is something that we did. We also started looking, because uh, people over here live on their daily income, and there was no income, and so we started ensuring that they get relief in terms of food security. And what our vocational training centers also did, because all of them were shut down, was that everybody in the hospitals and the vocational training centers started cooking and packing meals and taking it across. Then one thing we realized, and the government approached us, that they needed a lot of help for creating awareness about COVID, because people thought this is just an urban disease. It's never going to happen in rural areas or hard to reach areas. So the government approached us, and they approached most of the NGOs working in this sector, to reach out to the marginalized, to reach out to the most vulnerable, and to go to dark media areas, because the government was constantly doing a lot of messaging, but none of the messaging was in a traditional messaging mode. So we started, created a campaign called Virus Pe Vijay, means victory over virus. And we started doing very innovative um, messaging across all target audiences. And then, of course, while we were dealing with the first wave, we were stuck by a natural disaster, and that was the Amphan cyclone, which destroyed houses and everything. But we were one of the first responders for that. And while we're responding to that, we also, because during cyclone there was no medical service available, there was no food available, the local medical services had shut down completely. So that's when the leprosy mission came forward in all the cyclone hit areas and started responding in terms of relief and providing shelter to people. But while doing so, we also realized that it was very, very important to, capacitate staff. And while we were all shut down, people were in the houses, we, we started reaping the benefits of this amazing technology that we have, and we started reaching everybody and capacitating. Of course, there were some people in the hospitals and and other nursing staff who were capacitated in the hospital about the safety protocols and the COVID protocols. What we also helped people was generate livelihood, because there were some things that were not closing down, like vegetables and fruits and everything. So all the people who were really suffering were really enabled by giving them some seed money and helping them to start a vegetable shop or a fruit shop or a grocery shop. So that was very helpful. Now you can see that this is a small leprosy colony in India, and there were food packets over there that had been put together by your donations, by the donations that we received across, because again, this was completely out of the budget and we had no money. But then the kind of support that we got from all of you enabled every person till the last mile to get food and rations to sustain them. So this some of the response that we did and gave aid was across 10 states. And for food and medicine, about 60,000 people were provided with cooked meal, 8,000 people were provided with dry rations and groceries, and over 3,000 people were provided with sanitation kits. And of course, like I told you earlier, the multi-drug therapy and other medicines were provided at the doorstep of people. Here are some of the pictures where vehicles went door to door, giving the multi-drug therapy to people who had already finished the medicines and needed to continue, because it's very essential when you have leprosy and you're being treated for leprosy that you should not discontinue treatment even for a very short while. So all our hospital staff were tracking the people who had come for treatment and whose treatment was getting over and who couldn't come to take medicine. And then in terms of food and other supplies, we had all our mobile vehicles going door to door and providing them that. And then, like I mentioned earlier, a cyclone hit during the pandemic. What was our response? So India was hit by the super cyclone called Amphan during the pandemic, and it rendered thousands and thousands of people homeless, and health services were completely affected. So through our hospital in Kolkata and Bankura, a vocational training center, we provided a lot of medical and non-medical relief to people, reaching out to more than 11,000 people. A lot of food kits and hygiene kits were distributed, and about 120 homes were repaired, and people were given shelter while the homes were being repaired. During this time, also, the Leprosy Mission organized disability assessment camps, and there were close to about 600 people who were assessed for their disabilities. And among them, there were close to about 150 people who were provided aids and appliances. So you can have a look at the picture of this, that suddenly there was this disability camp and this cyclone, and a lot of work happened around it. So what did our hospitals do? Because most of our hospitals didn't have patients coming to the hospital because there was a complete lockdown. There were no vehicles available. So they started creating very innovative messaging, and they started sharing it, going to villages, talking about COVID, what could people do? Because we knew that if COVID or any kind of infection reaches the rural area, it's going to be absolutely terrible. And India was not geared or positioned to handle that. So that's when we came up with this very innovative campaign, for which we've been acknowledged all over by leading newspapers and the government, which is called Victory Over Virus. And what we also realized is, because when people feel that okay, this is something that we don't identify with, we came up with something that was very interesting. We started doing a lot of community challenges. We said, okay, you don't want to buy a mask, make one at home. And so there was somebody who was teaching them how to make masks. We said, you want to draw something, paint, you can't get out of your house, draw and paint on your walls or on your home, on the floors, and then send us a screenshot of it, and we will give the best winner an award. And this is what we did with our vocational training centers, the students of our vocational training centers. So this whole campaign was customized to ensure that everybody gets to know about it. So some of the focused messages were on the symptoms and prevention of COVID-19. And there were lots and lots of myths which were killing more people than COVID. Like, people would put some kind of a powder on them and lie down in the sun all day and die because of that. Um, and they would have burns, every crazy thing possible. People started having alcohol, thinking that if they're having alcohol, COVID, perhaps the virus won't attack them. There was, other than that, busting myths, there was a lot on mental health, because this was the first time people were isolated. And a lot of people affected by leprosy came forward to, through videos, to talk about how they have been isolated for centuries and centuries, yet they've been able to fight leprosy. And so they requested people that, we've been isolated for so long, you can be isolated for some time. And a lot of focus also over the screen, over technology, using Zoom, was given on mental health and providing care at home under lockdown. Some of our messages really encourage social distancing and using of face masks to prevent transmission. What was also interesting was, during, because the lockdown was sudden, there was no warning about the lockdown. We had a lot of patients, because a lot of our hospitals are 100 bedded hospitals, 150 bedded hospitals. So a lot of patients remained in the hospital and couldn't go back. And so they also joined in this campaign, and they started coming up with very interesting ways of creating messages. So when they knew that we were doing door to door medical care, they started writing messages on the envelopes where the medicines were put in, and that was sent across to people. So we saw a lot of innovation around this time. Now, if you look, these are some of the videos you could, I, because you don't have that time, I would have loved to play the videos. But you can come to our YouTube channel and see there's some absolutely fabulous videos. While people stayed at home, they created some really innovative messaging. Okay. Okay. So while we developed IEC materials like posters highlighting key preventive measures, there were many on-ground teams who were training patients and community members on the COVID safety protocol. And most of the hospitals, we did a lot of wall paintings across all our hospitals, because they were in very busy rural areas. They did a lot of wall painting with the first three symptoms, the kind of prevention that you should be taking, when should you come to the hospital, what should you do at home. And there were about 1 million people who were reached through this campaign. These were some of the posters that we created and customized in every language. Like, India is a very small country, but we have so many languages, and we have behavior, different kind of behavior patterns in every state. the food is different. So we had to keep that in mind and come up with posters that could connect people of different states and be in their own language. So there was a lot of work that happened. So many of our hospitals took permission from the local government bodies, and they went onto the roads and did painting on the road. The staff members and a lot of our community members went. Our, you can see pictures of our doctors going to rural areas and showing people how to wear a mask, when to wear a mask. And a lot of people, especially in the tribal areas and hard to reach areas, were got to know about COVID because of the outreach. So they, one of the, I would also like to, I've been talking a lot about innovation. There's something else that happened, which has been applauded by a lot of civil society organizations and all for thinking first, because two of our projects developed face masks with people who had a hearing impairment and they needed to do lip reading. So the transparent mouth cover enabled people to do a lot of lip reading and communicate properly with others. So there was a huge shortage of face shields in the market. So one of our projects developed and produced a lot of cost-effective face shields using very simple plastic paper, which are used for screen sharing or something, and distributed it among all the government staff and hospitals. And both our hospitals and our vocational training center joined together. Even our community members came forward and made a lot of masks with the locally available people. So there were close to about 25,000 people who were provided with such face masks. Uh, these are some of the pictures. You can see the transparent face mask. It may not be of perfect quality, but it did help a lot to people with disabilities. So while some of the ways that we chose were the traditional ways of raising awareness, and there's something known as miking, that you take your hospital ambulance or a vehicle and you go around because people cannot come, and you do a door-to-door awareness campaign. And there were a lot of community-based workshops also during this time. So you can see that people later on were made to come and in villages, and they were made to sit at good distance and follow the COVID protocol. And while following the COVID protocol, they were given all information about it. There was a lot of training of staff that happened on the safety protocol. On the ground staff received training in keeping hospital and especially the triage areas very sanitized. And some of the staff came with transparent barriers. So even while the hospital started opening and things started opening slowly, there was a lot of things that were happening, training of staff and how to handle patients when they're coming, what should be done, how should it be done. So every possible protocol was trained and people were capacitated with it. And when the people started coming back to hospitals, these are some of the pictures of our staff being trained, and the sanitizers, some of them, how to clean things and how to understand the procedures and how to go about it. Like I mentioned, something that was really good was our doorstep therapy clinic. The van was equipped with an electrotherapy equipment, LED monitor, and webcam for telemedication and telerehabilitation, and a public headrest system. So it would go to a small village, and this entire van was managed by physiotherapists, occupational therapists, and other technicians. And a lot of services were offered, including leprosy diagnosis, because the lockdown that happened in India was for a very long time. Things actually started opening up from September, and the lockdown started from 17th of March. So a lot of people were desperate for all kinds of healthcare, and a lot of services were provided by these mobile therapy camps. And there were more than 3,000 people who benefited from these. This is a picture of a mobile therapy clinic. You can see over here on the screen is one of our doctors, Dr. Helen. She is telling the occupational therapist on how to clean the wound, and he can show her the picture, and based on that a lot of therapy and a lot of you could see over here that there's some kind of physical therapy that's going on, and people were checked and they came over here and benefited a lot through these mobile therapy camps. And there was teleconsultation. Some of our hospitals also launched teleconsultation by all the staff members sitting in one place and offering a dedicated line that had many numbers attached to it, and people were calling because there was a lot of confusion about COVID and how do we go about it. So this was about it. So you can see this is our tele consultation center, and people are talking and people were speaking in different languages over here. One thing that really got affected, which I have mentioned earlier, is livelihood. So some of our community projects had formed about 29 SAGs with a lot of people in leprosy communities, and some of the people were not just affected by leprosy, but they were also having many other disabilities. And they were given training on home-based businesses, which including incense stick or fennel, and they had them give them a seed money, and they also help survive by sustaining and by selling some of the essential commodities like masks, bags, vegetables, fruits, and quite a few of these things. So see, these are some of the pictures of people who were provided with this help, and they managed to live a dignified life despite the fact that it was COVID and they had nothing to do and they had nothing to eat. Now, when the second wave set in, it was a huge disaster because we in India were not at all prepared for the second wave. Nothing, because we thought that that COVID is over, and we started our work and life as if nothing had happened. But the second wave hit us worse than before. It dealt a completely severe blow to us. On an average, there were about 4 lakh new cases, and every day, these are the only the government numbers, and they were triple the numbers that I'm talking about. So about 4,000 people dying every day. It's said that about 3 lakh people died in about 2 months because of the second wave. And again, a large part of the country went into lockdown, and our health system completely collapsed in every country. And lack of beds and like lack of oxygen were cited as one of the most important reasons why so many deaths happened. So what did the leprosy mission do during the second wave? Many of our hospitals were declared a vaccination center, and many of our hospitals turned into COVID care facilities. Now, this is again something that we are very thankful to each one of you, because everybody came forward to help the leprosy mission set up these COVID care centers with the facilities. Uh, but before and while setting up, there was absolutely no time to do much. So while setting up, what happened was we had to quickly capacitate our staff on the cases on how to handle COVID positive patients and to manage the wards. Many of our staff, despite of having been vaccinated, contracted COVID again, and this particular second wave did test the resilience of each person over here in TLM. Arranging oxygen cylinders, ventilators, oxygen concentrators was a huge challenge because there was a huge supply demand gap. Despite of all these challenges, there was an extremely good outcome for all the COVID patients who were admitted in our hospitals. These are some of the pictures of our hospitals that became COVID care facilities. And there are some of the challenges that still remain. To keep our services sustainable and prepare for better and unforeseen emergencies, especially the third wave of COVID, we need a lot of financial support because Right now, the numbers are still very high. We're trying to equip other hospitals, and the it's still spreading. So we've not been able to stop the spread or stop the transmission as yet. The many essential supplies like the mask and the sanitizers, oxygen cylinders, oxygen concentrators, and ventilators that are required. And to make it worse, we've needed a lot of additional operation expenditure because of so many sanitation methods and protocols that are there. While this challenge remains, we've seen a lot of challenges in our community. As many of you know, that other than our 14 hospitals, we have 6 vocational training centers. We also have a lot of community education centers. But with COVID, with lockdown, with students not being able to come, most of our programs are now conducted online. And many of the students are unable to do so, are unable to continue with the education, and they're dropping off, and they're getting into manual labor. There's so many children who are dropping off and are being forced by parents to get into some form of labor. And so what we have been doing is we've been finding mobile smartphones for our students and providing them. But still, our vocational training centers need about 111 computers to facilitate online exams. Also, to make sure that our vocational training centers are very sustainable, we plan to start production units to earn revenue. And it is this revenue that can help us sponsor any other source for any other students for any particular course. So it still needs these production units need about a one-time investment. Parents of about 60% of our students have become jobless during this pandemic, and most of the parents are not being able to make their ends meet. Forget about getting one proper meal a day. So many of them we're trying to reach out to parents to ensure that they are being looked after. We've calculated about 600 people in the communities have lost completely any kind of livelihood and are depending on humanitarian aid. And there are about 310 individuals who've been identified for training on different trades and supporting them with seed fund so that they can take it forward. You can see some of the pictures of our community training programs. You can see a person with disability learning how to become a carpenter, and then the family is also being provided here. There's a training program that started off. So that's it from our end. And thank you so much for listening to me.